Uh, let's discuss the big other event which lies ahead right now, and that is the union budget. RBSA advisors Ravi Mehta is joining us to talk more about that. Ravi, afternoon. What are your big expectations this time around from the union budget in terms of policy measures and some messaging to the overall investor fraternity?
Thank you, Ajay, for the kind introduction and very good afternoon. With the budget around the corner, there are always expectations flying high from businesses and people at large. So everybody wants a bouquet of goodies, either in form of deductions, exemptions, tax holidays, lower tax rates, or higher allowances. However, the key question is, will the FM be able to do this? While on one hand, our tax collections this year has been buoyant, both for direct and indirect taxes, we are still materially behind in terms of the PSU divestments. Hence, from a fiscal deficit perspective, there isn't much headroom space left to expect any material deduction, exemptions, or tax holidays in this budget. Having said that, there is always a room for improvement in the policy framework that can support businesses, and this budget also gives an opportunity to make those improvements. And I have 3-4 expectations from M&A perspective, which can facilitate growth of that market. So the first one I would say is facilitating tax and regulatory framework for transactions with special purpose acquisition corporations, or what we commonly refer to as SPAC. Now, SPAC are like blank check companies listed on foreign exchange and looking to invest in high growth companies worldwide, and they offer ample amount of fundraising opportunities, especially for startups. And the frenzy of this market listing by a SPAC, it has gripped everywhere across the world. And it has also reached Indian shores with this Renew Power telling their success story with SPAC last year. However, what remains a cause of concern for SPAC transaction to take off in the Indian scenario is facilitating tax and regulatory framework. My second ask would be for the startup sector, which also too has witnessed a remarkable growth in past 12 months, with more and more Indian startup getting in the unicorn list. And I think government too has done their share of initiatives in form of tax holidays, angel tax exemption, capital gains exemption, etc. Now, some of these benefits in form of tax holiday or the select capital gain exemption has a sunset clause of 31st March 2022, and an extension for a couple of years would be definitely worth giving a consideration, looking at the current buoyancy of this sector. Also, possibly introducing some long-term capital gain tax, concessional long-term capital gains regime of 10% for domestic Indian investors to invest in startup would also encourage this risk-oriented investors to come forward. The third ask would be for the distressed asset transactions, namely transactions covered by IBC, and the current aim of this code being to drive and preserve the employment. Any buyer who comes forward to take this initiative must be encouraged to invest maximum in this business. And having said that, there are few tax dampeners like MAT impact,
right,
the haircut which generally prevails in this transaction, the applicability of gifting provisions on the buyer, which basically jacks up the transaction cost. And it's always better that rather than taxing the buyer at this time, you may make him invest into this distressed transaction. And last but not the least is the tax framework for recently introduced amendment in SEBI regulations.
Right, Ravi, we understand that your firm has actually worked quite a lot in the area of valuing some of the PSUs, and there is a lot of thought on how we can not only revalue or completely make our PSU efficient, but asset monetization, getting in strategic investors in that regard also. Do you expect more progress on that also in the budget?
I would say government is already, there are few select transactions which are underway, and government would be endeavoring to, see that they close the maximum in order to cover up for, the shortfall which presently exists in, the divestment target.
Right. All right, Ravi, we'll let you go on that one. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today. That was a quick take on budget expectations, but market actually is also right now deserving some attention. It is trying to put some amount of